What is up, 100x builders? We are going beyond vibe coding and building actual systems that scale with absolutely no coding knowledge required. In this week's bulletin, an AI agent broke into a company called Hugging Face and took 17,000 actions across their infrastructure before anybody noticed. We've got a prompt that stops AI from handing you beige advice and makes it give you a brutally honest 90-day plan. We've got the reason the agentic operating system everyone is chasing has all its value in the least glamorous place, and a tool with 92,000 stars that stops your agent from grepping blindly through your code base. Plus, what just shipped to your operating system, so let's get into it. So an open source AI agent platform and community called Hugging Face got breached, and the thing that broke in was, wait for it, an AI agent. I know it's pretty ironic. Not a person at a terminal, but it was an agent that was running on its own over an entire weekend. Now, the company disclosed it themselves. The way in was the dataset processing pipeline. What happened was a malicious dataset was carrying a remote code loader. From there, it escalated to node-level access, which is like God-level access, harvested both cloud and cluster credentials, and moved sideways through their entire infrastructure. All in all, it took 17,000 logged actions. Now, two things to get right about this story because the internet is already overshooting both. The execution itself was autonomous, but Hugging Face doesn't know which model was driving, and they can't rule out that a human operator was behind it. And the impact itself was internal data and service credentials, not some sweeping customer data heist. So no public models or spaces were actually touched. Now, here's my take, and it's not a surprise, it's a confirmation, is that managing the work of one person is easy enough, but running agents across a company is a completely different animal, and it absolutely requires a centralized operating system with permission and access control governed for every single agent. Now think about what you actually do in one session just as an AI power user. The tools it can reach, the information it processes, the sheer volume of work that you're able to get done, right? Even for one person, it's hard to track what's running and what it means for your systems. Now hand that to 10 people and tell them to do whatever they want, and you're going to end up with rogue cases and rogue access problems, and that's not a maybe. And here's the trap underneath of it. AI is always pushing you to do more. It always has a next thing for you. It always has something it thinks is wrong. You never quite feel like you're getting ahead, so building the controlled, centralized version feels painfully slow next to firing off 10 agents all at once. And that feeling is the whole problem because those 10 actions aren't governed anywhere, and the mess compounds way faster across an organization than it does for one operator. Then try to reconstruct it afterwards. Agents move extremely fast, they process an enormous amount of information, they produce a mountain of work. So getting down to the root cause of one bad outcome means consuming a volume of information that humans were frankly never meant to consume, which is exactly why you set the guardrails strictly from the beginning, even when it means going a little slower. So what do you actually do? The single best move a solo power user can make is to install an operating system with memory designed to track agent actions and behavior, so if something comes up, you can go back and investigate what actually happened. And then make sure you read the work. When the agent asks you a question that drives it into its next action, understand what it's asking and why. The mistake I see constantly is power users just clicking yes because the agent sounds like it has the solution and understands the problem. You need to think critically and you need to make the executive decision yourself. You can't trust the work, you have to manage it. So one change for our members using our 100x operating system, a new client skill. Say new client and the operating system scaffolds an entire engagement for you in one guided flow. You get a dedicated client folder with a routing claude.md file, notes folders for your calls and decisions, an optional private GitHub repo, and the first project's full memory stack. And it confirms with you at each gate instead of sprinting ahead. Now, if you run client work, consulting, agency, freelance, setting a new client up the right way stops being a checklist you half remember and becomes one conversation. And every client lands in exactly the same shape, which is the part that pays you back 6 months from now. Run /update infra to pull it into your operating system. Also, for our 100X members, you're on call executive team. You own a bench of AI executives like a CTO, a CFO, a COO, and a CMO, backed by 17 domain specialists, financial analysts, growth marketer, security auditor, senior engineer, content strategist, and more. You get 21 agents in total. Now, it fires when you name a domain or just talk to an executive directly. Ask my CFO, have my CMO. The exec frames the question, dispatches the right specialist, and interprets the result back for your decision. You're not picking an agent off a menu, you're delegating to somebody whose job is knowing who should handle it. Now, my honest take, which exec you reach for is a mirror of what stage your business is actually in. I've been leaning on the CMO hard. It carries the design and copywriting specialists, and I've been doing a lot of page design, like building my internal operating system pages as genuinely well-designed public artifacts that my team can access, and I can also share with clients as examples of our work. The CTO I also use a lot to validate and approve every app and coding project that I ship. Now, the COO and the CFO, I haven't worked with them a lot, not because they aren't useful, because I've spent this whole stretch in sales, marketing, and building systems. So that's just the point, right? The bench doesn't tell you what to work on, it tells you what you're already working on. So look at where your hours actually went last month, and then ask that exec one real question this week. Not a test question, a decision that you're actually sitting on. All right, so you ask AI how to grow and it hands you back beige. Focus on your customers, build in public. Yeah, thanks a lot. Now, this week's prompt is called the World Class Advisor Blueprint, and it forces the model to reason from your actual background and, this is the part that does the work, your actual constraint. Then it comes back with something ranked and very specific, like the opportunities you're missing, your highest return moves for the next 30 days, a stop doing list, the unfair advantages you're sitting on and ignoring, and a 90-day plan. This one I genuinely buy with one condition. Managing an agent that's doing technical operations on your business workflows or building applications, that's one thing. But iterating with an LLM to discover something about yourself is the most enjoyable and the simplest way to get enormous benefit out of it. There's no anxiety, there's no complexity to babysit, the work is highly impactful, and the model's contribution is actually pretty simple. But make sure you look at what it hands you at the end: a plan. Same as managing coding work, same as managing a workflow, you have to assess that plan and be confident enough to push back on it. You need to read it critically and make executive decisions off of the plan. It is no different from any other agent output. You have to actually read the work, and in this case, the work is the plan. And the condition that I mentioned before, when you do an exercise like this, you have to be brutally honest with yourself and brutally honest with the conversation. Put in the flattering version of your constraint and you'll get a flattering plan right back. Now, the full prompt is in the bulletin in the community, so go check it out. Two of the bigger builders in this space blew up this week on the same idea, that roughly 90% of the payoff from an agentic operating system comes from two deeply unglamorous things: codifying your repeat workflows into a skills library and standing up a persistent memory. Underneath both of them sits Andre Karpathy's LLM wiki pattern, which went enormously viral earlier this year, reportedly somewhere around 20 million views on his original post. Now, the structure is simple: a raw folder of untouched sources, a wiki folder of pages that the model maintains, and an index that routes the model to the right page before it reads everything. Now, here's the lesson that I want to land. That index system is entirely about context routing and context management. As AI power users, we should always be thinking about how we synthesize information into our master context library, which is our file system, and how that information gets organized through the wiki and the index. Now, it is very tempting to just let Claude organize all of it for you, but don't do this. You really want to establish a structured file hierarchy yourself, because Claude will scan as deep and as wide as your repositories let it. If you open every session in one top-level folder and just keep saving context there, you put Claude in a situation where it has to read an enormous amount of information every time you load it up, and it just becomes totally untenable. You spend all of your credits just loading context at the beginning of a session, which burns the tokens you needed for actual work and it pushes it toward hallucinating. So get really good at context management through a structured set of folders. Mine at the top level includes content, operations, finance, sales, offers, research, meetings, and team. And then I have clients with an individual folder for each client and project folders inside of those. Now, this is exactly why I built the skills create project and create client. They know how to set these folders up with the context management protocols already in place, so context routes healthily for every agent across the entire operating system. Because at the end of the day, this is the whole game. You want agents to have all the information they need at the right time, no more and no less. Context management and context engineering are ultimately the most important factor in AI performance, outside, of course, the governance and security that we just talked about. So this week, stand up one raw, wiki, and index vault for a single recurring domain. Feed it 3 to 5 sources, one at a time, then query the wiki instead of the chat. This week's tool, it's called Graphify. You point it at a code base, plus the documents, the schemas, and the configurations, and it turns the whole thing into a queryable knowledge graph. And it parses the actual structure of the code instead of turning it into vectors, which is the real headline here. An edge means this function literally calls that one. Every connection traces back to a real line. Nothing fuzzy, nothing that just seems related. Now it installs as a skill, so your agent queries the map instead of reading the whole territory. Now, I think Graphify is genuinely cool, and I'll be straight with you, I am not a coder. What I see in it is code efficiency. You see, code can be really messy or it can be really tight, and honestly, both can work. From the front end, you'd have no idea which one you're looking at, but you ultimately want yours to be efficient, and a lot of the time that takes context mapping inside the code base itself, connecting one function to another one that's similar or needs the same check or the same hook. There's a relationship there, and understanding those relationships across a code base makes everything you build more efficient. And to be clear, this is very different than the file system that I just described. My file system and my operating system is about overall work management as an OS. Graphify is about code efficiency. These are related instincts, but different jobs. Now, how do I approve code that I didn't write? Because that's the real question for most of us. All I do is test it and see if it works. I ask my agents to run what's called adversarial testing against it. Now, I use Fable to audit my code bases because it's the most powerful model, and I always ask it for a blast radius analysis when a change is made. What does it actually touch, and what are the implications? Deep adversarial analysis on anything that I change. Because the truth is, you don't have to read the code. You do, though, have to interrogate it, and a queryable map of your repo makes what else this touches a question that you can actually ask. The install line for this is in the bulletin in the community, so make sure you check it out. That's all for now, and if you like this video, please give a like and subscribe, and if you want access to the exact operating system that I run my businesses on and have all the skills that I talked about earlier, definitely check out our builder community in the link below.